In my previous videos, I talk about Chapter 8 and Chapter 7. Chapter 8 is on the collection of qualitative data. Chapter 8 is on the analysis and interpretation of qualitative data. In this video, I'll be taking up Chapter 9, Reporting and Evaluating Research. These are the learning objectives. Define the purpose of a research report and identify the types. Identify how to structure your research report. Identify good, sensitive, ethical, and scholarly writing practices. Then list criteria for evaluating a research report. What is a research report and what are its types? As you see on the screen, a research report is a completed study that reports an investigation or exploration of a problem, identifies questions to be addressed, and includes data collected, analyzed, and interpreted by the researcher. So as you see, there is what we call investigation or exploration. Remember that the qualitative research design is for exploration and the quantitative research design is for explanation or investigation. What audience will receive the report? The first one, audiences have different standards. Second, audiences for research could be faculty, including advisors or committees, journal reviewers, policymakers, practicing educators, conference paper reviewers, and the researcher himself or the researcher herself. Table 9.1 shows the audiences for research. First column is on audiences, and the second column is on the standards. For faculty, advisor, or committees, the standards, so standards used in the past in program area, standards traditionally used by each individual faculty member, standards used at the college or university. So like at NORSU, we have a standard and different faculty members also in a certain university or in a certain college have also different standards. And even program areas have different standards. Journal reviewers. If you're going to look at different journals, there are a set of reviewers and different journals have different standards. So in terms of the journal reviewers, the standards used of published standards printed typically once for each volume and available in author guidelines from the journal's website. Separate standards may be published for quantitative and qualitative research. Editor must reconcile differing opinions among reviewers. So as a research report is being evaluated by different reviewers, the different reviewers have different comments, have different suggestions. And in a journal, there is what we call editor. The role of the editor, one of the roles of the editor is actually to reconcile different opinions, different comments, different suggestions among or between reviewers. Next is policymakers. The standards is of understanding, immediate application of results, and clarity as well as brevity of ideas. Practicing educators could be one of the audiences. And the standards, relevance of problem or issue being studied, ease of studying results, practical suggestions from a research study. Another one, conference paper reviewer as one of the audiences. The standards, whether the researcher has submitted the proper materials, whether the proposal fits the conference theme or the priorities for the conference, whether the project summary is clearly written and organized and addresses the guidelines for a summary. Then we have the researcher as one of the audiences. The standards of the outlet for the study. namely faculty, journal, practitioners, or conferences, seminars, workshops. Standards related to the five elements and the seven phases in the research process, as I mentioned in previous face-to-face classes and on my other videos. What is a research report and what are its types? So what are the types of research reports? So we have dissertations and theses. Dissertation for doctorate degrees, theses for master's degrees, or even in the undergraduate degrees. Dissertation and thesis proposals, journal articles, conference papers, conference proposals, reports for policymakers or school leaders and personnel. Doctoral and master's research reports, length and approach varies. Qualitative studies include participant codes and are generally longer, defended before a faculty committee. So all theses, all dissertations that have been completed should be defended for the final defense, and the committee is composed of experts for that certain dissertation or for that certain proposal in both research proposals or in a completed dissertation or a completed thesis. What are the types of research reports, dissertation, and thesis proposals? As a continuation, a plan for research before beginning, written in future tense, what will take place, stops with methods or procedures, no results yet. The purpose of a proposal, help think through all aspects of the study and anticipate the problems. What are the types of research reports, dissertation, and thesis proposals? So still a continuation. We have a well-defined proposal. What is a well-defined proposal? So the first facilitates obtaining permissions, provide information to gatekeepers, provides criteria to assess quality. And in terms of formats, the formats differ in many ways. They differ in terms of theoretical perspective. They differ in terms of literature review. And in figure 9.2, formats of quantitative and qualitative proposals. So in the quantitative proposal format, there's a title page. In the qualitative format, there is still a title page. In both quantitative and qualitative format, there is abstract. And then in quantitative format, the introduction is composed of statement of the problem, purpose and research questions or hypotheses, the theoretical perspective, definition of terms or the operational definition of terms, delimitations and limitation of the study. In the qualitative format, we have introduction is composed of statement of the problem, the purpose and research question, delimitations and limitations. Then there is what we call procedure, qualitative methodology and design, research site and purposeful sampling, data analysis procedures, researchers' role, and potential ethical issues, methods of validation. Then you're able to have the preliminary findings, anticipated outcomes of the study and tentative literature review as an option, then timeline, budget, and preliminary chapter outline, then references, and then appendices. So in our case, we have to make use of the American Psychological Association 6th edition because that is free. You can download that one in the APA website. There are latest editions of the APA format, but they are actually for a certain period. So going back to quantitative format, we have review of the related literature. So they have methods. Under methods, we have study design, procedures, instruments, reliability, validity. Data analysis, preliminary results, potential ethical issues. Timeline, budget, and preliminary chapter outline, then grievances, and then appendices. So if you look at figure 9.2, there are what we call similarities in terms of contents, and there are what we call differences in terms of the content for both types of designs. So what are the types of research reports in terms of journal articles? So journal article publish shorter research report than you send to an editor of the journal. And the journal article is shorter than an actual thesis or an actual dissertation. Usually 2 to 3 reviewers provide comments, no, depending on the journal. Editor makes decision. What are the decision of the editors? Accept, revise, and resubmit, or it can be in terms of a rejection. Conference papers and proposals. A conference paper, research report presented to an audience at a state, regional, national, or international conference, typically sponsored by a professional association. Or in the Philippines, there are many professional associations that normally regularly sponsor conferences. Conference proposal, so brief proposal to present a study at a conference. Guidelines provided by the conference association. Every conference you can find the guidelines about the conference proposal, and even in the conference paper, guidelines are actually provided by the organizer or the association or the professional organization that actually sponsors the conference. Typically, 15 to 20-minute presentation is actually used. Sample guidelines for conference proposals for the American Educational Research Association, objectives or purposes, perspective or theoretical framework, methods, techniques, or modes of inquiry, data sources, evidence, objects, or materials, results in or conclusions, point of view, scholarly or scientific importance of the study. Report for policy makers or school personnel. So timing is important. Report specifically the most important one or the significant findings or the highlights of the entire research. Present results simply and clearly. Include a one-page executive summary at the beginning. So at Morso, for example, there is what we call an executive summary. And what is the content of the executive summary? What are the different components of an executive summary? And I guess you have actually read this one because I let you read different theses, different dissertations of the Norsu Graduate School. So the first column is actually the problems, the specific problems. Second column is about the findings. The third column is about the conclusions. And then the last column is about the recommendations. Look at the physical structure of research reports. So examine the following: the levels of heading in a study, the 6 steps in the research process. I mentioned that one in previous videos. The research questions or hypotheses and the answers. The structures or different types of reports, qualitative and quantitative. Design an appropriate quantitative structure. So we have the front matter. So we have title page, abstract, then body of the paper, introduction, review of the related literature or just the review of literature, then the methods, then results, discussion, then the back matter. The back matter includes references and then appendices. So, designing an appropriate qualitative structure, so a scientific structure. So we have front matter, title page, preface, and acknowledgement. That's optional. Table of contents, tables, figures, then abstract, then body of the paper. So we have introduction and then procedures. Then we have findings, discussion. In the back matter, we have references, appendices, and in the appendices, you can find figures, interviews, observation, and then the protocols. Still in the design under appropriate qualitative structure. So scientific approach, storytelling approach, thematic approach, descriptive approach, theoretical approach, experimental alternative, or performance approach. So in this um, slide, we're seeing the different designs or approaches appropriate for qualitative structure. So from scientific approach to experimental, alternative, or performance approach. Front matter, title, page, preface and acknowledgements, optional. Table of contents, optional. List of tables, optional. List of figures, optional. Abstract of the study, optional. But at NORSU, these are not optionals. These are actually mandatory in a complete thesis or in a complete dissertation. Then body of the paper, specific description of individual of interest in the study, author's relation or connection to the participant. So these are actually some of the contents of figure 9.5, the front matter, body, and back matter of a qualitative storytelling structure. So in terms of the body of the paper, a continuation of figure 9.5, the data collected during the study, a specific incident to understand the individual's life, the meaning of the incident, larger understanding of the group of people to which the individual belongs, a comparison of the meaning of published studies, return to author's personal meaning of the individual and events. The back matter is composed of references. How do you write in a sensitive, ethical, and scholarly way? Take note of the following. Are sensitive to individuals and use language that reduces bias. Use appropriate research terms. Write and report the findings ethically. Employ a point of view consistent with quantitative and qualitative approaches. Balance research and content. Interconnect parts of the study. So there are actually interconnections from one part to another part of the study. Then advance a concise title. The title must not be that long, otherwise no one would actually be interested in reading the entire research paper. Have a short title, but looking at the short title, it captures everything in the entire research process. Use language that reduces bias. Describe individuals at an appropriate level of specificity. Be sensitive to labels for individuals or groups. Acknowledge participation of people in the study. Encode scholarly terms into your research. Encoding is an author's intentional use of specific terms to convey ideas. Use standard quantitative and qualitative terms appropriately. So in quantitative, there are actually specific terms intended for quantitative research design, and there are specific terms intended for qualitative research designs. Be consistent in the use of terms. Consult a dictionary of research terms, not actually the ordinary dictionary, because in some cases, the ordinary dictionary does not actually give the real meaning of the term as you use the term in your study. That is why we have operational definition of terms, wherein that term can be defined in your own perspective based on the way you use that term in your thesis or in your proposal or in your dissertation. Use ethical reporting and writing of research results. Report honestly. Share reports with others. Refrain from duplicate and piecemeal publication of data. Give credit for using someone else's work so that you will not be accused of plagiarism. Always have a citation if the idea is not yours. Do not engage in research that represents a conflict of is to give credit for authorship, negotiate early if there are actually many claims for authorship. Use an appropriate point of view. In quantitative writing, often the investigator is in the background. EPA encourages first the person to avoid ambiguity, follow use in your subfield, depending on the format that the university is actually using. Use passive construction sparingly. So you know what is passive and you know what is active way back uh, those different English courses that you have taken. In qualitative writing, often the investigator is present and the in foreground may relate personal meaning. Balance your research and content. So balance research and content in a 50-50 basis. 50 research and 50% in terms of content. Better model displaying balance. In this project, 400 academic chairpersons were randomly sampled so that results could be generalized to the population of academic chairpersons in research one institutions of higher education. Capital letter N is equal to 2,000 shares. When you encounter capital letter N, that represents population, and that is actually equal to the identification of the total members of the population. When you encounter small letter n, that refers to the sample size. And the sample size is representative of the total population. Remember that I mentioned that we use sample because the population is so big and it is impractical for us to collect data from each member of the population. Moreover, the 400 chairpersons represented both men and women chairs in proportion to which they were represented in the total population, 300 males and 100 females. And this is an example of a stratified sampling design that there is a proportion between male samples and female samples with reference to the total population. Interconnect sections for consistency. Use linking devices, words or phrases that tie together sections of a research report. State variables and use exact name each time. Use the same research questions and hypotheses all throughout. I mentioned that one. Use exactly the same term. If you use performance, use performance at all times. If you use achievement, then use achievement at all times. Do not actually make some changes of those different terms to avoid redundancy. Well, that's true in our English courses. We taught that we should avoid redundancy. But in research, all of those terms that we use at the very beginning should be exactly mentioned, should be exactly used all throughout the manuscripts. So, state the central phenomenon each time. Repeat the problem all throughout. Why? Because that is actually what we are going to take up. That is what we are actually dealing with in the entire research process from the very beginning until the completion of the research paper. Advance a concise title. The purpose of a title is to summarize the major idea of the paper in a concise and clear manner. It must be concise and clear manner. No more than 12 words is ideal, but it would depend on the university, it would depend on the college, and that differs across universities, across colleges. So, advance a concise title. So good quantitative title, independent and dependent variables in order, then participants, then research site or location. Good qualitative title, central phenomenon, participants, then research site or location. But actually, these are not standards. It would vary from one format to another format, from one university to another university, from one college to another college, or even from one department to another department in a certain college or in a certain university. Employ appropriate standards. Does it meet publication standards? Will it be useful in our school or university or college? Will it advance policy discussions? Will it add scholarly knowledge about a topic or research problem? Will it help address some present educational problems? In terms of quantitative standards, these are the shortcomings: validity and reliability of data gathering procedures, weakness in research design, the weaknesses in the different utilization of research designs, either quanti or quali or the mixed research design, limitations of study not being stated, but as a standard, the limitations must be stated in the manuscript. Inappropriate use of sampling designs and even the inappropriate calculation of sample size. Results of analysis are not clearly reported, inappropriate methods to analyze data, unclear writing, that's very common, assumptions not clearly stated, data gathering methods not clearly described. In terms of qualitative standards, the philosophical ideas behind the research, the procedures of data collection and analysis, the participatory advocacy writers focus on collaboration and persuasion. Quantitative standards, according to Lincoln's 1995 philosophical criteria. Standards set in inquiry community, so guidelines for publication. Positionality, text, honest and authentic. Community, serves community purposes. Then the voice, participants are actually being heard. Critical subjectivity, researcher heightens self-awareness, creates social transformation, reciprocity between researcher and participants, sacredness of relationship, respect for participants, between researcher and participants, and even between and among participants, sharing privileges, sharing of rewards with participants. Qualitative standards, Creswell and Poth's 2018 procedural criteria. Research questions guide the process. Rigorous data collection, multiple forms, extensive data, consistent with philosophical assumptions of qualitative research, evolving design, multiple perspectives. Employs an approach include case study, grounded theory, the narrative research design. We'll take up this one in another video. Starts with focus on central phenomena, written persuasively, multiple levels of analysis, narrative engages the reader, includes strategies to confirm accuracy. Qualitative standards according to Richardson's 2000 participatory advocacy criteria. First, substantive contribution, significant understanding of social life, aesthetic merit, practices, open up text, artistically shape, non-moral. Reflexivity, adequate self-awareness, self-exposure to reader. Impact, affects the reader emotionally, intellectually, move to action. Expression of reality seems to be true. So how do you evaluate the quality of your research? So evaluate with a process approach. Title for the study, research problem, the literature review, the purpose statement and questions hypotheses, the data collection, the data analysis and results or findings, the writing, then look at figure 9.6 and then 9.7 for the checklist. Re-examine the parent involvement and mother's trust in principal studies. Both include the research problem, use of literature, collection and analysis of data, interpretation of the meaning of the data in a format for writing the report. Encoding influences and measures quantitative variables. Discussing research design for qualitative research design. Presence of researcher, none in quantitative study. discuss personal difficulty in recruiting in qualitative study results. In terms of statistical discussion for quantitative, quote-based thematic discussion in qualitative research design. All that I mentioned are copyrighted by Person Product Education based in Singapore, and all of those ideas are taken from the ideas, the thoughts, and the works of Dr. Creswell.